I'm Allison Gray, and my experience on ayahuasca sucked ass, and I am finally ready to talk about it 5 years later. Because a few minutes ago, I caught myself spiraling into like some really negative thoughts, and I just feel like that's the perfect entry point for talking about what went wrong with my ayahuasca journey. Before I start, just a quick acknowledgement of just like my bizarre webcam lighting situation. I heard someone say recently that like if you're a certain type of person, like I think maybe I'm projecting backwards in time onto the memory of what she actually said, but I think I remember this lady saying, if you're someone who walks between worlds, you're never gonna quite show up clearly on camera. Like you'll look blurry or grainy or whatever, and like yes, I objectively am just using a shitty webcam right now, but in general, I have found that I never seem to photograph maybe as clearly as other people I know, and I like to think it's because I'm some like cryptid who walks between worlds. But anyway, that's the reason for this like ridiculously bright lamp that's sitting right here, because without it I look like this. That's not so bad. I mean, this is good, but like in a MySpace way. I miss MySpace. I miss when on the internet you didn't have to have like an IMAX camera to film your YouTube videos. Can I just look like a cryptid, please? Okay. Anyway, back to my story about I love myself. Okay, so 5 years ago, I decided to do ayahuasca. Now, I had like an unofficial deal with all the plant spirits saying I would only do them if they called me. So my friend at the time reached out and said she was planning to go do ayahuasca in Arizona. At the time, I think I was living in New York. And she asked if I'd like to come along, and initially I said no, because I felt like I needed to be called. And she was shocked by that. She was like, oh, I thought of anyone I know, you would be the most interested in doing ayahuasca. And I was like, no, I want it to like synchronistically call me. So she respected that, but then I got to thinking about it, and then I had a really amazing breakthrough conversation with my older brother. We hadn't really talked for most of my life. I don't know, we were like strangers to each other, even though we lived in the same house. Like, we just didn't get along, but then, one day we decided to get high together, and then we ended up just having the most cosmic conversation, and this is how I discovered that my brother is also a very spiritual, philosophical being. And I was like, oh my god, like we're cut from the same cloth, like you really are my brother, like so as we're standing there side by side talking about the universe and God and numerology and all this stuff, I had mentioned to him in this conversation that my friend invited me to do ayahuasca, but I hadn't said yes, and he responded to say he was genuinely surprised that I turned it down, and like kind of like encouraged me to reconsider. I don't remember exactly what he said, but somewhere around that point of the conversation, we both happened to look up at the night sky at the same time, and this giant comet that looked like a flare just like went across the sky, and we both were like, whoa, did you see that? It was dramatic. And I decided, with my ignorance around the subject of synchronicities at the time, that was a sign from the universe that I should do ayahuasca. So literally, guys, I will keep telling you about the book I wrote about how you should not follow signs. The signs come from in you, not from outside of you. So that's my book. I'll put a picture here. I don't have it near me, but yeah, so in my grand wisdom at the time, I decided that comet that went across the sky was like in response to our part of the conversation about ayahuasca. So I decided to do it. So I joined my friend and her friend, and we went to Phoenix to do ayahuasca, and I took the dieta really seriously leading up to this. Like, I was told, okay, don't eat this. I was like, I got you. And I'm really good at strict, like, ascetic ways of eating. Like, if that's a talent, I'm really talented at, like, fasting. So I was, like, super receptive. I could feel how sensitive it made my body to cut away all these like toxins and really dense foods and just leave these like pure, lighter, like vegetables and simple things in my diet. I just felt so sensitive. Like any substance, I would feel it 10 times as much as usual. So my other friends were straight up that they did not take the diet that seriously. So that could explain why I seemed to trip harder than anyone else in the room. Because I'll skip ahead to this part. I tripped for like 12 hours and I was still up and continuing to trip while everyone else was asleep, which was very scary considering it was not a good trip. So, anyway, let me go back to the beginning. So we're in this lady's house, and you know, she's a facilitator. That's all I'm gonna say about that. And so she, you know, did the ceremony to like set the tone, set the intention, and all of that. And mind you, at this point in my life, I had only smoked weed. That was the strongest psychoactive substance. Yeah, actually, I didn't do mushrooms until after ayahuasca, so I had it all backwards. But yeah, my strongest experience of a psychoactive substance was weed, and that, I don't know, maybe that was a mistake. It was a mistake, in fact. I'm gonna tell you why I think that at the end of this story. But basically, I feel the need to make this video because I never hear anyone really openly discussing the bad ayahuasca experiences, and I hate that. For years, I never really explained to anyone why I didn't like my ayahuasca ceremony, because people get really defensive about it. People are really protective of their ayahuasca experiences and don't want to hear any criticisms, like as if your experience invalidates theirs. Like they can't hold the possibility that it's not for everyone, or not everyone's ready, or whatever the case may be. Or sometimes the facilitators suck, or like that. I don't think that was the case with me. I'm doing a lot of like, you know, I'll get to the story. So she offered us the first cup, and then we went to our cots to lay down, and I wasn't really feeling anything, and I think a full hour passed, and then she offered us the second cup. So I took a second cup, and so did my friends, and at this point they were already starting to trip. I could hear them, like they were having hallucinations, and I could hear them responding verbally to their hallucinations, but in my mind's eye I still wasn't really seeing anything outstanding. So I was like, oh, I guess maybe I need more than I thought. And so when she offered us a third cup, I had a gut instinct that I should say no, but I said yes. And it was like maybe 5 minutes after I took the third cup that the first cup hit. So it took me like 2 hours to feel anything, but at that point it was too late to like undo the 2 cups I took since then. So I knew I was in for it as soon as the first cup started to hit. Oh man. So I will say it started on a really positive note. Sort of. I was starting to go to a dark place with, like, at the time I had been single for I think like a year, and I was really sad about this, and I guess I sort of prayed for help, and I was like, you know, what does real love feel like, you know, I just want to know. And a bunch of entities appeared before me, and one of them was Shiva, who I have quite a long history with in my genetic memory and also in this incarnation. Shiva, the Hindu god. And I invited him forward. I told this story on my Substack somewhere, I'll link it below, where he took me into his lap. We were sitting in lotus position, and he gazed into my eyes, and it was the most beautiful. It was so beautiful. I wish I was a talented enough painter to paint how crystal clear and beautiful his eyes were, and how full of love and adoration they were as he stared into me. And I felt transfigured by the way he was staring into me, as if it was like the first time I ever felt like someone was staring at me and not judging, not rejecting any part of me, not scared of me, not intimidated, just full, total loving acceptance of my entire being. It was beautiful to receive that, and it has definitely shaped my love life since. Like, it definitely set a standard for me. of what love I will accept. So that was the positive note everything started on, and then from there things got so intense. So the first big intense thing that happened was I suddenly started seeing, like, you know, the geometry of reality. So this is where things started to break down and become extremely psychedelic, and I could no longer get like a grip on, you know, normal or consensus reality. Things started to like deconstruct, and I was seeing these like pulsing geometric like waveforms and patterns and colors, and everything was like a really intense rave or something. I've never even been to a rave. Why am I using that metaphor? But it was just like I was just seeing into some other, like, kaleidoscopically. And then next thing I know, I was surrounded by a giant rainbow serpent. Now, here's the part where I question the narrative that, like, people will see, like, things that are objectively in other dimensions or something. I believe I saw a serpent because when I was reading about ayahuasca in preparation for the experience, I came upon a lot of snake stories. And so I think somewhere in me I was expecting to see a snake. But anyway, this thing was massive and was circled around me, and I was just like inside of the coil of this giant snake. And I remember from one of the stories I'd read that you're supposed to be fearless when confronted with the serpent, or else they will devour you. So I was like, I'm not afraid. I want to learn your mysteries, oh great rainbow serpent. And then I started trying to dive deeper into the serpent, but what was actually happening was, like, in the physical world, I was just hitting my head on the ground over and over again. Which the facilitator says she doesn't remember happening, but I had the, like, pain in my forehead the next day. I don't know, maybe she was just, like, something else had her attention at that moment, but, then the next part that happened, this was the twisted part that I hate, and I've never talked about this publicly before, but basically, the next thing that happened was I had a thought about my best friend dying, which is, like, my worst fear. I don't want to, I've been through that before, don't want to go through that again, but I just could not stop thinking of losing him. Oh no, that's not even the next thing that happened. No, I skipped a very key detail. Okay. There came a point, like a breakthrough point in all of this psychedelic stuff going on, where I suddenly felt like I had died. And that, like, this felt like this space I was in felt like the afterlife. I felt like I had died. This was the afterlife. This was my funeral or something, and I didn't want to die, and I was ready to, like, you know, come back to life. And I kept begging the ayahuasquero to tell me that I wasn't dead, and she laughed and she was like, no, you're not dead. And, like, to her it was funny, but to me it wasn't, like, because the next thing that happened, now this is where it's really symbolic and revelatory. Literally the next thing that came to my mind after realizing, oh my God, I'm dead, was, oh shit, I was supposed to go to Tennessee tomorrow to sign the mortgage with my family, and if I can't do that, they're gonna be really upset. Literally my first thought when I thought I was dead was like, no, I'm not allowed to be dead. I have to do something for my parents, which, like, really says it all about the kind of wounding I carry from my family system. You can't die yet, you have a mortgage to sign. But yeah, so that was the first thing I thought of. So then, in this context of me thinking I was dead, that feeling lasted 12 hours because I was so scared to go to sleep, because I was so afraid I would not wake up. And so I fought like hell to stay alive for 12 fucking hours. I sure learned what a strong will to live I have. So then I started having those thoughts about my bestie dying, and every time I'd have a thought about that, it would amplify and multiply and fractalize until it was like surrounding me, and it felt like every thought lasted for an eternity. I was stuck in a thought loop, an eternity of my worst fear, and it was awful. And then The next thing that happened, I somehow shifted to thinking instead about another fear of mine, which was, at the time, I had a really intense obsession that I was like trying to keep a secret with a certain person. And then so I thought, oh my god, what if I lose control of my mouth and I start talking, and then I tell this person how much I obsess over them, and then they find out, and then it's going to be mortifying and embarrassing for me. And so that became a thought loop, like an eternal thought loop of them finding out that I have this secret obsession with them, and then me like absolutely going insane and psychotic and becoming one of those people who like babbles on the subway platform because they have completely lost touch with reality. Like, that was where it went. So in all these examples I'm giving you, thinking I had died and then that lasting for 12 hours, thinking my best friend was going to die and then that lasting for hours, and then thinking that this person I had an obsession with was going to find out, and then that lasting for hours. What sucked about this, besides the obvious like abject distress of being trapped in your own worst thoughts for hours, was that no one had told me that you have to control your mind. Like, when I had encountered writings about the ayahuasca experience, all I ever remember people talking about was like, oh, you see things in other dimensions, like you meet other entities and deities and whatever. No one told me that what ayahuasca actually does is like mega amplify your own thoughts, your own states of being. So as soon as you have a thought, what ayahuasca does is show you just how quickly that thought starts manifesting and spreading, is it called mitosis? When a cell starts, it's been a while since I've been in school, but like when a cell starts dividing and dividing and dividing and dividing and like growing into an organism. That's the power of your thoughts. Every single thought you think, every day, day in and day out, whether you're on psychoactive substances or not, every thought you think has this power to start manifesting immediately. And I think ayahuasca just shows you that. It's like it pulls this veil of time away so you can actually see how every thought you think determines the realm you think you're in. I was in a realm where I was dead for 12 hours because I chose to focus on that feeling of being dead. So that, and then all the other stuff, like if I had just had a little more practice maybe with meditating and with controlling my thoughts and directing them with intention, or if anyone had told me that ayahuasca could be a manifestation experience where you choose one blissful like thing you wish to manifest and think about that, and then ayahuasca will just like amplify it for you, like that would have been so much better. But like no one told me that, and I think that's because a lot of people don't know that themselves. Like plenty of people have done ayahuasca, but mostly the way people talk about it is as if ayahuasca is like giving you visions and like she decides what you see and you just have no agency at all. You just have to surrender and give up and let her have her way with you. But like just like everything else in this reality, it's all you. And it took me 5 years to figure that out. 5 years to like go back over the details of this experience and realize, oh, everything I saw started with one thought. Every vision I had, like for example, I met the mantis beings, I met the DMT jesters, but I think it's because I was expecting to, because I had read about all these different experiences. And so it was somewhere in my mind going into this. So I think I've adequately made my point. Basically, like if you're intending to do ayahuasca, like I am of the opinion that it's not that you're necessarily, you're not necessarily going to some other dimension, and it's not necessarily that ayahuasca is determining your experience. If you get stuck in a thought loop, remember you can change your thoughts at any moment and just hold a different thought for as long as you can and just change the course of your thoughts. So what ayahuasca revealed to me was where my own weak points and fears were, that I was still choosing to focus on when I could have chosen any other thought. in that 12 hours, I decided to torture myself when that wasn't necessary. And so this is why I'm so much more of a stickler now about choosing my thoughts very carefully and not allowing myself to spiral into bad places, because your thoughts are that powerful. And that's not to say you're never allowed to have a bad day, but just remember that once you let the emotion pass through you, you can, okay, return to the next most comfortable thought you can reach for and stay there. Like, So, yeah, I think I've made my point. So while I'm here, I'll go ahead and make a point that I've been wanting to put out there somewhere on the internet, so this seems like an appropriate venue. When I do occasionally partake of any sort of substance, and which really, when I say substance, I just mean weed. I don't do anything else. When I do smoke weed, it's once a year now, and it's very ceremonial. I don't do it casually, or I try not to. I always like to set an intention and meditate for the duration of being high. So now when I do have a ceremonious experience with marijuana, I like to meditate on what I'd like to manifest and visualize it really strongly, because I have had instant manifestations after smoking weed while manifesting and holding the state of being of the wish fulfilled. I have silly examples, but basically I think in the same way that ayahuasca reveals your thoughts to you and amplifies them, so you kind of have this fractaline mirror to observe yourself in. I think marijuana in its own way makes it easier to dwell in your imagination. There's something about marijuana that makes it very easy to stay in a daydream and really relish fantasy. So if you're planning on partaking anytime soon, which is up to you, that's between you and your own highest authority. If you are planning to, I would just say try that. Instead of just being casual about it and la-di-da, doing it for funsies, just try manifesting with it and see what happens, because I have had great success doing that. So that is not me encouraging you to do anything. I have to say that, I guess, for the algorithm. I'm not encouraging any particular behaviors or actions. You are responsible for your own choices, whatever. Yeah, so that's my story. Thanks for listening. Love you, love, likes.